Hey there! It's part 9! Ba-ba-da-ba! My name's Sean Gately, by the way, and you can be my friend on Facebook if you want. There's a lot of Sean Gately's out there. Turns out there's maybe 8 nationwide. And I think some of them have reasons to be, their lives have been outstanding in some way. But I do think I'm the best one. I'm the best Sean Gately. All right. Today we're going to talk about splicing. Oh boy. All right. There's suffering that can happen by reliving old memories. And it could be an old memory in which you were a victim somehow, like it seemed like something was happening to you. And it could also be guilt, maybe something that you did that you wish you could have done better. Or it could be something that wasn't really your fault, but well, I guess that would be the first one. Anyway, humans tend to relive bad stuff over and over, and it just replays in your. Maybe it's every day. Maybe you get up in the morning and you're doing your stuff, and that same old grievance comes back, and you're reliving it in your head, and all those justifications or those like thoughts of like vengeance, or maybe how you were done wrong. And so here's my question. How long is that going to go on? Like, imagine this. This is my mental exercise that I sometimes challenge people with. Like if they're complaining about something and I'm like, well, so-and-so, you're bringing this up again. This is the 10th time you've told me this story. Yeah, I know. Well, why are you living it over and over again? But here's the question. If you are going to live to be 900 years old in good health and in clarity of mental state, how long do you want to hold on to this thing? How long do you want to relive it? Are you going to be, no exaggeration, are you going to be 900 years old on your deathbed, like today's the day it's all over, and you're still going to think about this thing that happened when you were 15, 25, 35? How long do you want to relive it? No, I think you should get out a piece of paper and you should be like, all right, here's the age at which I would let this go. Or maybe it's like this just this burning thing. It's like, no, I could never forgive it. I could never let it go. I could never forgive myself. And I'm like, all right, well, that's a choice. That's a choice to be made, and you can change your mind at any time. Now, later on I'm going to talk about forgiveness, because I'm not a fan of forgiveness. I'm a fan of something different, which is getting rid of the thing to be forgiven to begin with. Like, just completely let it go. Because the forgiveness just becomes another thing that you're kind of holding on to and kind of thinking about, and you're still thinking about it. And I say you, but the fact is, I'm really talking about myself, because I have to answer these questions. Sean, how long are you going to hold on to it? How long are you going to keep going with the same thing? And I'm like, and I find now that I've pulled back inside my mind and I'm observing my thoughts, and I'm just going, oh, I have this momentum with whatever the thing is. Like the thought has to run its course. I can't just get mid-thought and just sort of be like, oh yeah, that really doesn't matter anymore. Well, I do now. I realize that it's happening, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have time to really mess with that today. And this will be literally the 800th day, the 800th time that I've sort of hashed out the same thing in my own mind. So I'm going to tell you a story. Here's the story. When I was 14, my parents and my sister and I moved into a new home. And it was a beautiful home. And I loved that place. It was I have amazing memories of this house. We called it the Yellow House. And my father had left for a distant city to pursue a career opportunity. And that summer, he came back home, and we were really glad to see him. And I remember that the ice cream truck went by, and my mom and I went out, and they had a soft serve machine on it. And they made us soft serve vanilla cones. And my mom and I, we went out, because across the street was alfalfa fields, which smelled amazing. Oh, I can still smell it. I used to go out and cut alfalfa to go feed to the rabbits that we owned. And then next to that was a football field for the local college. And you could get in, and it wasn't just a football field, it had like baseball diamonds on it too. So my mom and I took our cones and we walked across the street and went in through the fence. We sat down on the little baseball benches and we ate our ice cream cones. And she put her arms around me and she said, "Sean, your father and I really love you. And I'll never, ever, ever forget that day." It was beautiful. And that's what happened that day. All right, so memory splicing works like this. You've got a choice. You can remember something as it actually happened, or you can remember something the way that you choose to remember it. Now, first off, even if you attempt to remember something the way that it actually happened, you might not remember it right. You might get details and find out later that you saw it incorrectly. And you might also say, "Well, Sean, what about the truth?" And I say, if something's causing you suffering and there's no practical after effect which you can actually change, meaning the memory of whatever it is that's bothering you, it doesn't, like, there's no difference. You're just, the only effect of that thing happening is the fact that you're replaying in your head again and again and again. And guess what? You're the only one that's suffering from it. You're the one doing it. So there is a choice to go in and completely cut that memory out and choose a different memory, and to replay that memory in your head so often that your own neurons physically reform around that memory and you just get rid of it, and it's gone. And in a very practical and real way, that suffering can finally be at an end. Now, the reason why I don't usually bring this up is because most people aren't keen on that. One, they either are like that old, bad, hateful, victim-y, or like whatever the emotion is, that old memory is now like old leather. Like, it might hurt, but it's so familiar that it can be comforting. And then the other reason is, well, you got to go back, you got to open up all those old wounds so you can finally rework everything. I don't know. I'm not a professional, guys, so I can't tell you if maybe that's better for some people. I can only tell you what I've done, which is I changed those memories into something different. And I realized as I was running up to making this video that I'm like, oh, I still have things that I need to just splice. It's just not useful to relive them anymore. And I could get rid of them, but then I'd have to get rid of like this segment of my life. But of course, arguably, if you really want to be a Zen master and live in the moment, well, then nothing about your life matters. So I'm 51. Guess what matters? The one day I'm living today. That's the only thing. None of that other stuff, it exists. You can't go back. You can't go back to Ashland, Oregon in the 80s. It doesn't exist. And I found that out because about 6 years ago I went back to my hometown. I'm like, oh, everything's different. That you can't step into the same river twice. And nostalgia, actually, when I was in college, a big series of courses that I took was on nostalgia, which was like Latin American countries where there was civil unrest and people were exiled. The exiles would come back and they'd find out the country they left no longer even existed. And so they just kind of had this memory in their minds. So, so there's that. So guys, that's an end to suffering. Really, do you want to keep suffering, or do you want to try something different? And so that's those exercises to get rid of just get rid of that suffering a little bit. And memory splicing. That's another one. It is a choice. You may choose to remember something as it actually happened, if that's even possible, or you can remember it in a different way and choose a different set of memories. It's like, but what about the family reunion? Well, keep it to yourself. Just have that for yourself, and splice them out to get just to get rid of that suffering, to get rid of that over and over again. All right, there's more.